Boom shakalaka, ladies and gentlemen, freaks and geeks, beautiful brothers and sisters all around the world in this Euclidean meat space reality. You were listening to the soulful machinations of the chocolate Nubian soul brother, the disseminator of wisdomatic truth bombs, the supreme purveyor of silliness. Ooh, I like these titles that I come up with for myself. And over the next hour, we are going to get into this tumultuous conversation around freedom of speech, around gun control, around the most hot button issue right now, which is the assassination of Charlie Kirk, who was the founder of Turning Point USA. And, you know, it seems as if much of what I talk about on this podcast, particularly as of late, revolves around the United States of America. And my podcast is something that is very general. I talk about essentially what's going on in the world. But let's face it, what's going on in the U.S. is probably the most pertinent issue because it gets to the heart of, well, society. So much of what goes on in the U.S. affects the world. It is the biggest superpower. And not just militarily, but when it comes to pop culture, when it comes to influence on what goes on in the world, it really starts there. But first and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, I want to get some business out of the way. Be sure to check us out on the Spotify, on the iTunes. We are now on Amazon. We are all over the interwebs. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok, where you can find me serenading the senoritas and promoting my music. I got an album out. Would love you guys to check that out. It's called Apotheosis, and it is available on Spotify, on digital outlets, but it is also now available on hard disk. I have a reamped version of the album called Apotheosis, Rhythm of the Soul. I have a track that has never been released before called Rhythm of the Soul, a hip-hop track. I have some remixes, and I got 17 tracks that make up the album, and would love you guys to check it out. If you appreciate independent artistry, check it out. It is a work of art. It's a work of art. Can I say that? It sounds very pompous. It is a work of art, and I do believe that you should check it out if you appreciate the finer things in life, if you're a sophisticated person. But it is something I've been working on for the last 7 or so years, and I've written a lot of the tracks myself, produced a lot of the tracks myself, a lot of collaborations there, and a lot of the themes are around consciousness and love and all the permutations of life. And it is definitely my apotheosis, my point of excellence. You know, that point where you've arrived at something that you feel as if it's your manifestation of the greatest version of yourself. Of course, we're always moving towards greater things, but it really is a hallmark of my achievement, and I would love you guys to check it out. If you follow us on the Instagram and TikTok, my music, be sure to do so. And if you want to get more into the juicy stuff, obviously stay tuned for my videos on YouTube. I've been releasing a lot of smaller form videos over the last few months talking about political issues, societal issues, and the podcast on the Spotify focuses around these topics, but sometimes, you know, we try to get a bit more lighthearted, get musicians on. I've not had any guests as of late, but I'm planning to do so. Been doing a lot of these solo podcasts, just putting out my thoughts. Let us know if you are feeling this, but let us know if you have any suggestions for guests that you think would be insightful to have on the Crystal Journey podcast, the most conscious comedy podcast in the multiverse. But let's get to it. Ladies and gentlemen, freaks and geeks, it's been a tumultuous few weeks, to say the least. We've had the assassination of Charlie Kirk, who is the founder of Turning Point USA, was arguably one of the reasons why Donald Trump was so successful in his run for POTUS. And look, let's talk about the assassination. Let's talk about the first issue, because what's going on right now is that there is this conversation around whether or not you should be able to talk about what happened in a positive or negative light. There are a lot of people that are condemning what happened, obviously, which is the right position, I would hope, for any sane member of the society. And of course, you have people that are saying either full-blown, yeah, man, I'm happy that he was assassinated, or people that are doing this muddy the waters kind of thing where they're saying, yeah, look, I don't condone violence, but I'm happy he's dead kind of thing. And look, here's the underlying point, guys. Here's the underlying point. You should not be condoning murder at all, period. You don't have to be some pro capitalist. You don't have to be some pro right winger. You don't have to be a fan of Charlie Kirk to be able to say that assassinations are just a bad thing without even needing to give a caveat, right? Like, let's just be real about this, just so that you understand. I, for one, I actually started watching Charlie Kirk many years back, and I found him to be a great debater, a masturbator, like myself. But no, I actually found him to be very insightful in a lot of the arguments he would give. Some of them I agree with, some of them I don't like with most people. And then later down the line, as the years progressed, I realized that, this guy's actually saying a lot of stuff I really don't agree with. And I would say, for the most part, I did not actually agree with Charlie Kirk. His position on the obvious things dealing with reality, like, for instance, two sexes, all that kind of stuff, obviously I'm on board with. But on the hard-hitting issues, I would say dealing with what's going on in Palestine, on issues like the deal with freedom, right, people's rights, like abortion and so forth, didn't agree with him on. And I could run through the list, but that really is immaterial to the point. Besides all of that kind of stuff, and bearing in mind, I still respected his game, like the fact that he had balls to go out there and say what he was saying, amidst the line of fire. Because anytime you speak about the truth, you share your thoughts about what's going on in the world, you become a target. It takes balls to do that kind of stuff. And I might not respect what you're saying, but I respect courage. I think it's the testing point of every virtue, and the guy had loads of it. But that being said, the idea of him being assassinated, that was disturbing for so many reasons. On a selfless level, it's just gross when you see any kind of pain. It could be any innocent life of someone that I don't know, someone being shot by a bullet, in some far off war-torn country. It's still horrible when you come close to that, when you see the effect in other families, or whether it's someone that has been assassinated in the manner, in such a public fashion, and you know that the children were around and they have to witness that. People often overlook the fact that it's not just about the life that you're taking, but it's about the secondary effects it has on people around you. And one of the arguments I often hear from people that are pro, you're speaking to someone that is a bit of an animal rights person. I am deeply invested in not only human rights, but animal rights. I often think about how our attitude towards animals, and a lot of people make the argument that, hey, look, you're taking the lives of these animals, but they don't feel anything, they don't feel any pain, which is kind of arguable. But you think about the effects of the other animals that have lost the life of someone, their mother, their son, their father. They feel those effects as well. They mourn. That is a real thing. In the same way that humans, we feel the effects of when we lose someone that is close to us, animals feel that as well. But that goes away from the main point, which is that, there's a lot of harm that's caused when you take someone out like that. And I don't think anyone deserves that. I know the line has always been very clear that we do not incite violence. We do. And here's the thing. Look, you can say that Charlie Kirk was someone that was speaking a lot of hateful things and was saying a lot of things that you don't agree with. But if you want to start glorifying people being taken out like that, if you want to start arguing that that is some kind of incitement of violence and make these insane equivocations like, oh, well, wait a sec, he might as well been a Hitler because of the kind of stuff that he was saying that you happen to disagree with, which I happen to disagree with some of the stuff as well, and that somehow justifies him being taken out, then you're moving into this weird area where you can justify anything. This is the kind of mentality that is so deplorable. This is the kind of stuff where you can call anyone a bad person. You could say, hey, well, and I always look at this I always bring the worst case scenario into play. Like, I always use the most extreme examples of this. For instance, Hitler, right? Like, people always use him as an example. Is it okay to take away the life of Hitler, to assassinate him? And I would actually say, no, I don't. Hitler, this is going to be very controversial. Obviously was a horrible person, but he was pretty much just getting people to do dirty work. I don't know if granted, I know he fought initially in some wars and so forth, but for the most part, he was getting people, these Nazis, to commit horrible things. He was essentially inciting horrible violence and so forth. But do I believe in assassinations for people doing that kind of stuff? No, I think they should be brought to justice. But I would go as far as saying I don't believe it justifies murdering someone. Because you can easily make the argument, granted, someone may not be a Hitler, but they're inciting violence by saying things that are creating this environment of violence and so forth. And this is the argument a lot of people make, that, well, yeah, sure, he wasn't killing anyone, but his hatred towards women with his transphobia was leading to violence. And these are just completely amorphous equivocations. You can justify anything with that kind of logic. So I don't support any kind of assassination, any kind of violence, period. And I think if you glorify that kind of stuff, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's going to get you canceled faster than a flat earther working for NASA. I mean, that shit is, and I'm not saying that it is right for people to be canceled for even saying that kind of stuff, to say that, look, you're happy that something happened, which is different to actually inciting violence, right? The glorification of violence, like saying, you know what, I'm happy that this person was taken out, is not the same as actually inciting violence, which is the line for freedom of speech, classically speaking. And people that want to make this equivocation of hate speech being akin to the incitement of violence, they're moving into Momo land. This is what I call Momo land. This is the kind of stuff where people just say nonsensical things. Like, for instance, the people that want to even deny the fact that this thing took place, they're in flat earth territory. They're in the realm of, well, I don't know if Charlie Kirk was even assassinated. I think it's anything that comes out in the public is fake. I mean, and look, I don't deal in that realm. If you're new to my podcast and you want to go down that route, you're listening to the wrong podcast. I am someone that is deeply into this kind of stuff. I have been following these areas of study for as long as the OGs. People like Alex Jones, David Icke, that have been speaking about this kind of subject matter. I've been following their entire career since day one, which kind of shows my age. I know I may look like a youngin', but believe me, I have more years than the vast majority of people that delve into this subject matter. But for some reason, a lot of them seem to be lacking an understanding of the basic literature pertaining to what's going on in this world. The thing I respect about figures like Alex Jones, David Smith, and Nick Fuentes is, whereas I don't agree with a lot of the things they say, they've at least read the syllabus. They understand some basic things that are going on in the world, and granted, they have the conspiracies that I don't agree with on what's going on. They at least are tied enough to reality to see certain things that are going on, obviously. But for the momos out there that deny all this kind of stuff, they want to start talking in the realm of, well, I don't even know if this happened. And, well, like Candace Owens, more recently, she started stoking the fires of whether or not Israel is involved in this. And look, it's more tangible when you have a listen to her arguments. And there are some things in regards to the assassination which may raise an eyebrow. For instance, the guy that initially claimed he was the assassinator happened to be Jewish, which makes you go, these are coincidences that, they don't really narrate a plausible motive for the assassination and whatnot. But you're moving into the realm of Momoism when you start coming up with conspiracies that don't have sufficient motive, that don't have actual evidence, any good evidence. And look, we can all agree on things. In terms of the requirement for something to be good evidence, this thing would at least need to pass the summary hearing in court, so to determine whether or not this could even be considered something that would go to trial. Most of the shit the conspiracy theorists, even to the kind of shit that Candace Owens, who I massively respect, by the way, I think she has greater balls than 99% of the people that speak about what's going on in this world, but also has a ground understanding of what's essentially going on in the world right now. But she questions a lot of shit. She questions to the point where you start going, okay, I think you're going a bit too deep into these waters right now. And she tries to connect the dots about everything. And this is the kind of stuff that you tend to do when you've seen so much bullshit. This is the kind of stuff that Alex Jones suffers from. And I've watched Alex Jones. He's considered to be one of the biggest conspiracy theorists because what he's constantly doing is he's connecting the dots, and he's seen so much provable conspiracies like the Northwoods incident, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, the lockdown scenario. Most people say the vaccine pandemic. I refer to it as the lockdown epidemic because I don't buy into the whole narrative of there being some serious pandemic, right? I mean, I think if you actually have a look at what went on, it was no greater issue than your typical bad flu season. But besides the point, there are a lot of people that get so caught up in seeing so many of the conspiracies taking place that they don't, or they look at every other potential conspiracy as being there. They see things when they're not there. But look, let's get back to the facts. Let's get back to the nuts and bolts of what's going on right now, which is Charlie Kirk's assassination and the attitude people have around glorifying this kind of stuff. As I said, it's not cool. You don't have to be a Turning Point supporter. You don't have to be conservative. You don't have to be a leftist. You don't have to be of any affiliation to have some basic decency to say, hey man, at least within the modern world, within a world where we value some kind of universal sense of right and wrong. I mean, we all have different views on political issues, but on a universal principle level, murder, I mean, these are cardinal. I don't even want to go religious on this kind of shit. This is just shit that you should not be doing, period. And if you move down the route of, well, he did this and that, it's a slippery slope. And you're going to end up being a hypocrite. And on a more selfish level, you have to look at how this affects you. I mean, for anyone that is saying anything for that matter, because anything that you say is going to be considered controversial. I mean, there's going to be at least 30, 40% of people that listen to the things that I've said right now, and they're going to be angered by it. When all I'm saying is, I don't think it's cool to kill people for expressing things that you don't like. I mean, it's not like Charlie Kirk was slicing people up or something like that. I mean, he wouldn't make Dexter's List. He was slicing up arguments, fair enough, but he's not the kind of person who was going out and killing people, right? And look, you can actually make that argument, and I'd be like, I mean, I wouldn't make the argument, but I would at least understand it. If you went after someone, you assassinated someone that was actually actively killing people, not inciting violence, was actually made Dexter's List. And I think this is the classic example, right? Because anyone that watches Dexter understands that Dexter, one of the things I like about the show is he has this code, which is basically a code that allows him to go out and kill people. Now, Dexter's the kind of person that gets some kind of weird satisfaction from killing bad people, right? But he's not doing anything that, I mean, he's doing shit that's kind of like creepy. It's gross. Most of us would understand that's kind of weird if you're taking pleasure in these horrible acts and so forth. But he's taking out actual bad people, not people that have committed emotional violence or said something that offended someone, not people that have misgendered someone, not people that have been predators, right, that have shown interest in someone that is of a biologically sound age, right, and it's considered to be reprehensible by the current legal construct. No, he's going after people that have actually taken other people's lives, that have actually raped them, or have committed actual violent crimes. And Charlie Kirk didn't do any of this kind of shit. He doesn't make the list. But people that make the argument, wait, let's off someone. One of the things I love about the new Dexter series, the series that's out at the moment, is there's this, no spoiler here, but there's this scene where he's trying to get someone on the list. He's trying to talk himself into actually justifying taking this person out, and he keeps going back to himself. He has this dialogue with his father, who is no longer around, as to whether, because his father's the one that gave him the idea of the code, the list, right? The code as to whether or not someone actually makes the list to be someone that he would take out, Dexter would take out. And he's trying to convince himself to put a guy on the list that doesn't belong on the list. Fortunately, the guy doesn't actually make the list. He just scares. I won't spoil it for you, but a lot of people try to do this thing where they try to get Charlie Kirk to make the list, right? Even though Charlie Kirk wasn't slicing anyone up, right? Just slicing up arguments. They're like, yeah, but he was really hateful and he was transphobic, which is creating an environment and it's causing lots of deaths. And this is the kind of shit that disingenuous people do. Just say that he wasn't on the list. He shouldn't be on the list. You don't like him. You can do that, but don't advocate for actually assassinating a guy or glorifying the fact that he's been taken out in the most horrible way. If you actually listen to the story of like his mentor, what he went through taking Charlie to hospital, it is so horrific hearing that kind of stuff. I mean, the human part of you just there's nothing beautiful about that. You don't have to be a bleeding heart liberal or a flaming right-wing conservative. Ooh, I like that one. I just coined that one. A flaming right-wing conservative. To appreciate that there is something really sad about that. And when you cannot acknowledge that, you lose the most greatest thing to the human condition: your conscience, your soul, your ability to look at a situation and actually feel the pain that someone else was going through. And I don't care what your ideology is. If you cannot do that, you lose what it means to actually be an individuated soul having this experience, regardless of what your religion may be. It is a universal thing that we find within all creatures on this planet, that we feel what other people are feeling. And it's something that doesn't require you to be of any particular ideology to acknowledge that. I'm going to play for you guys a video where you get to hear the experience someone had of watching the death of Charlie Kirk. And it's something that I would not wish upon my worst enemy. Okay.
Charlie Kirk was literally like a son to me. I have 3 sons. He was like my 4th son. My 3 sons are a little bit older than Charlie. He was like my 4th son. So when he was hit, if your son got hit, what would you do? What would you do? I got in the car. Because if there was any way I could save him, I had to do something. And I couldn't just take him. You guys got it. So they got him into the side of the car. It was an SUV. It was the SUV we took over. And I'm on one side, and there's actually some video of this. Somebody was taking video of this. I'm on one side of the car, the right side, and they're getting Charlie in. So I run over to the other side, but the guy who was dragging him in is now blocking that entrance. So at that point, I run around to the back. I pop the back gate open, and I jump in the back. The car lurches forward. Apparently, somebody jumped in the car. So the car lurches forward, so I almost fall out of the car, the SUV. Then I grab the thing and close it, and there's 5 of us in the car now. Justin is driving. Dan is up front with the GPS. Rick has got him. Rick's on my left, and Brian is there, and I'm coming over the back seat, and Charlie's laid out in front, just right in front of me. And Charlie's so tall, we can't close the door. We drove 4 miles, I don't know, it's 4 something miles, all the way to the hospital with the door open. To this day, I don't know how Brian stayed in the car, because we're just go, 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 go. We're trying to stop the bleeding. You saw it. And I'm yelling, come on, Charlie, come on, come on. Meanwhile, my phone is still on. My son and daughter-in-law are hearing this whole thing. And his security team, again, Justin, Dan, Brian, and Rick, they love Charlie. But they were much cooler than I mean, they're just carrying out, they're calmly, but they're swiftly doing exactly what they were trained to do. Rick starts praying out loud. I'm praying out loud. We're yelling, come on, let's go, let's go, let's go. My son's hearing all this, and we're doing the best we can to navigate traffic. This is not a highway. We're on surface streets. And suddenly there's an ambulance coming toward us. And there was conversation in the car. Should we stop? We're like, no, just keep going, just keep going. The doctor later said that was the right thing to do. Ambulance goes by us. We're still heading to the hospital, trying to get there. At one point, somebody says, let's get there in one piece, because we're cutting through intersections, we're just beeping the horn. This is not an emergency vehicle. There's no lights. There's none of this. And I go, we got to start CPR. So I try and start that. Now, Charlie wasn't there. His eyes were fixed. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking past me right into eternity. He was with Jesus already.
I'm so sorry.
All right. Anyway, obviously that's a very, very sad scene, and for someone that has lost someone that was very dear to me, when you magnify that with the circumstances around that, like it's not someone just leaving you per se. It's the last moments it's how it happens that can be so traumatic. When you watch someone in pain struggle for their last moments, or they are the circumstances around that are so painful, that's what makes losing someone so incredibly difficult. And just considering the fact that Charlie Kirk's kids were there, many of his friends, his family were all around watching that, you think about the pain it has on them. For the people that have so much hatred towards Charlie Kirk, at least wouldn't you have some compassion for the people around him? I mean, and Charlie Kirk, you can say what you will, but he does not make that Dexter's List. You know, it could have been this is the kind of shit that happens to any person that speaks uncomfortable truths that rub people the wrong way, whether you're on the left, whether you're on the right. I've heard people say that, look, this stuff is only happening to people that are saying, right-wing talking points and so forth. But it's not about right-wing talking points or left-wing talking points. The reality of the situation is that if you say something that is unpopular, right? And look, we've obviously seen this turning point, right, where the current theme at the moment is that the people that are typically in vogue are the people that are more in the conservative alignment, right? But not that long ago, it wasn't the case. And if you come out and you say something that is more of a left-wing talking point, so to speak, the idea that you're saying this stuff heavily enough and you're not going to have people come out and want to exercise violence on you. I mean, if you can pretend that that's not something that happens, you're being delusional. I mean, it's been like that throughout history. You say something that is not popular enough, and you become a target. This is why people always say, at least the phrase always goes, when you tell the truth, make sure you make people laugh, otherwise they will kill you. And this has been the theme throughout all of history. All the truth speakers, all the philosophers, I mean, we can go back to Socrates speaking the unpopular truth and dying with hemlock because of it, right? It's the same kind of thing here. You say something that is not considered appropriate by enough people, and all it takes is one person to be triggered. And the reality is you cannot please everyone in this world. I don't care how nice you are. They're gonna be people like me out there. Like, the thing that I find most annoying, one of the things, is when people are trying so hard to be diplomatic, all right, that they don't want to say anything that is controversial. Like things that should just obviously be like truths, you know, like the people that can't, for instance, say, and this is going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, that what's going on in Palestine, where all those kids are dying, is just wrong. What the Israeli government is doing is just absolutely bad, because they're trying to be so diplomatic, or they take on this position. Well, look, I'm not going to say it's good or bad. People that want to sit on the fence, they're going to get in trouble as well. I mean, fence sitters will often get shot as well. Unfortunately, anytime you take on a position in this world, it's going to piss some people off. Now, granted, when you take on a position and you're extremely vocal about it and you're not funny enough about it, that really makes you a target. But there is no way to stay away from being a target in this world. I mean, this is what unfortunately happens. And it is a sad thing to see what has happened to Charlie Kirk. My heart wounds over this, not because he was someone that I even liked. I didn't know the guy personally. I actually, towards the later part of his campaign, I found myself to be at odds with him, but absolutely was not at odds with him as an individual. That obviously was someone that was very intelligent. I didn't agree with on a political level, but absolutely do not in any way, shape, or form condone that. Do not in any way, shape, or form glorify that. And I think it's absolutely despicable. Even with my friends, people that I vehemently disagree with, that make me so mad to the point that I don't want to speak to them ever again, I would never wish ill upon them. And I think that is the sign of a virtuous person. More importantly, it's a sign of a virtuous society to actually allow these conversations to take place, which is what Charlie Kirk was trying to do. I mean, he went down as saying that, and I hate how people try to spin this. Effectively, he said that people's deaths are what we pay for having gun rights, that kind of stuff. I mean, and it wasn't that he was advocating for the death of people, but he did say that it was a price that he's willing to pay for the fact that there are some people that die, obviously, to have these rights to own guns. And effectively, even though the vast majority of, I would say, a lot of people that are on the left would not agree with this characterization, What that means is that deaths and blood is what you pay for freedom. For the freedom, and it's not about having gun rights. It's not, the whole idea of this is that whether it's being able to hold guns, whether it's being able to speak your mind, whether it's the ability to hold thoughts, do things that are not directly harming anyone, it all comes down to that. This is the price you pay for freedom, for a free society. Freedom is the sign of a virtuous society. Freedom of speech, gun rights. Because fundamentally, the alternative is that we're going to impose actual violence on you. And this is what a lot of my bleeding heart liberal friends don't understand. I am actually the biggest bleeding heart liberal you will ever find. But the biggest thing is because of my actions, I am an extremely anarcho-capitalistic person in the fact that I don't believe in taking shit from other people. I don't believe in actually using the government in order to apply violations on people's freedoms ever. I may feel the same way that, look, I wish you guys would be more compassionate. I wish you guys would be more considerate, my friends on the right. I wish you guys would not be mean to people and say mean things and so forth, even though I often say these things as well, Sometimes unintentionally you say things that offend people and so forth. However, the distinction is that I am not going to advocate for violence. The only line between being someone that is, I would say, a leftist, right, versus to someone that is actually someone that is respecting of individual rights is whether or not you were willing to implement the violation of people's freedoms. And of course, it's all done in the interest of wanting to protect people in the future, the safety argument, so forth. But because I don't advocate for that kind of stuff, granted, I feel this, I understand what a lot of my progressive liberal friends are saying, that, this guy was saying mean stuff and so forth, and I feel that stuff here. I resonate with that, and I wish there was a lot more compassion in the world, but I'm not willing to freaking get the government to restrict people's rights by having these hate speech laws, right? Which all that effectively means is that if you say something that I don't like, that I consider hateful, that offends me, I now get to use the power of the government to restrict your rights, which leads to actual violence. What you're advocating for when you advocate for hate speech, classically speaking, is you're advocating for the arm of the government in committing violence. And you're now inciting the same kind of hate speech that you were, well, not hate speech, actual violence that you were accusing people like Charlie Kirk of advocating for, because you're actually advocating. People look at the incitement of violence as actual things like calling out someone's death, but the incitement of violence is also inciting for the government to take away the rights of people, to lock people in their homes, which is something we saw during the lockdowns. It's also advocating for the government to prevent people from being able to have sex with whoever they want to, because they're of a consenting age. They're actually able to make informed decisions for themselves. They have free will. And regardless of what your ideology, what your religion might be, if you advocate for these kind of things, you move into totalitarianism. So whereas I may have the same sensibilities as some of my Christian friends or some of my liberal friends on certain topics, I don't believe in using the power of the state in order to restrict that. Whether that's getting the state in order to restrict a woman's right to her own bodily autonomy, or whether it's getting the state to restrict people's ability to say things that are unpleasant. Now, as for people being fired because of this whole thing, because of them glorifying some of the things that have transpired with the Charlie Kirk assassination and so forth, let's have a look, for instance, at what happened with Jimmy Kimmel. That's a really interesting situation, because I listened to what he had to say when this whole thing popped up. And granted, look, it had to do, from my understanding, it was more a mischaracterization of, and this is effectively what it was, of this shooter being a MAGA supporter. Because like with most things, when the information hits, there's a lot of stuff that most people don't know. Most people are quick to make judgments, and he was quick to make this assessment that the shooter was this MAGA supporter. He said this in his delivery, right? But outside of that, outside of characterizing this guy as being some right-wing kind of individual, and the evidence now shows that he actually was more in line with liberal, leftist, progressive ideology, and was actually in a relationship with a trans woman, or let's just say a man. I try to use correct terminology here, but effectively a trans person, all right? And had been planning this entire thing for about over a year or so, and was so angered by what Charlie had said the last time he was in Utah, speaking about this issue, that, and the way that it made him look, the fact that he was in a relationship with someone that was obviously trans and so forth, and that he felt justified in actually planning this kind of revenge. And it's interesting because it shows the effect that this stuff has on people. And I'm not denying this stuff. Words can tangibly very powerful. Words can be like bullets. Now, of course, they are not actually bullets. And let's be very clear. When I say like bullets, I am making an analogy. I'm not. It's not some kind of. It's not making the comparison that I'm saying that they are the same thing, because they're not. But what I'm saying is they can feel subjectively to be as hurtful as bullets. It's not actual violence. But when people say hurtful, mean things to you that are just their perspective, they're just perpetuating their worldview, it can upset you. Even when it's something that you know isn't true, but like when, for instance, when people say things, when people are conspiracy theorists, but they're literally momos that have no understanding about what's going on in the world. They call everything a conspiracy. They say things like the earth is flat. They say things like, oh, the Charlie Kirk assassination, it was staged. Oh, Donald Trump was staged. And then they don't realize that actual conspiracies like Agenda 2130, right? Pharmaceutical companies that try to push these products on their people. They say, oh no, they're not trying to do that. And they deny actual things that are provable, right? They recite these talking points like, this is safe and effective. You know what I'm talking about. These are the people that annoy me, right? Because they literally have, and it's not even an intelligence thing per se. I mean, you could argue it is, but it's just low awareness. It's just people that have not done much research into these topics. These are the kind of people that annoy me. But what was I saying? Yeah, look, in regards to Charlie Kirk, Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel's assessment of the shooter may have been just a lack of information, but he's still entitled to that opinion. The thing that gets people so wilded up about this whole thing is they get tribal. No one wants to be in the same camp as someone that's done an evil. In the same way that I find it annoying when people that identify as being conspiracy theorists actually don't really care about it. It's just when I hear something that's untruthful, it annoys me. When I hear something that's just demonstrably stupid, it just irks me. Not the point where I want to shoot anyone, but it's the point where I'm like, you're an idiot. I want to say that to someone's face, but of course I have to be more diplomatic because I'm a gentleman, and I say, well, listen, man, I don't think you know what you're talking about. But they still get triggered when I say shit like that, because no one wants to seem as if they're ignorant, all right? At least a lot of people don't. But the idea of using physical violence ultimately is never cool. And the greater issue here, actually not the greater issue, but I kind of drifted away from the sub point I was making, which was in regards to Jimmy Kimmel losing his job because of saying something that was inaccurate. It's not like Jimmy was advocating for violence in this guy. Thank goodness he did not say something like that. He just mischaracterized the guy as being aligned with a particular group. And I feel as if so many people on the right were so offended by this, right? Because it's the implication that this is their doing. When realistically speaking, the implication here is that because of the shit so many people on the left have been regurgitating, this has obviously triggered people enough. The media has been perpetuating these ideas. It's triggered some people enough to actually take someone's life, as opposed to the narrative that because of the dastardly misrepresentations of people on the right, the MAGA people, it's actually spoke the fires and led to this gun violence. And that's understandable that people would get triggered like that, but ultimately Jimmy Kimmel was just expressing his opinion, misinformation. Now you can make the argument that, look, a private company gets to decide whether or not they want to fire someone, but from what I understand, Jimmy Kimmel had a contract, and he's actually openly said that within his contract there were like 7 or so words that he was not able to say, provided he didn't say any of these words. He had the right to say whatever he wanted to. I mean, outside of obviously the incitement of actual violence, which no one is saying he did, unless you're a crazy momo that wants to equivocate misinformation with the incitement of violence and make these ridiculous connecting the dots like you're a drunk person playing Twister. But no, he did not advocate for anything of the sort, and rightfully so. Mind you, I don't like the vast majority of shit that Jimmy Kimmel says. I think he's one of these crazy people that has lost touch with reality. But that being said, he absolutely has a right to sue Disney for, from what I understand, Disney's responsible for him losing his job, to sue Disney because of this shit. Because realistically speaking, if you have a contract in place, this has nothing to do with the government. Nothing to do with the government whatsoever. And an organization decides to fire you despite this contract that says you're able to do what you're doing, provided you don't cross this line. They just decide to fire you because they don't like the fact that you've said something. That's not how things work in the world. Contracts, which are an extension of your rights, agreements, and so forth, mean something. And this is the thing that I find so frustrating about what people on the right do. Because they're so angry, because they have their goal in place, and understandably, they're thinking about their survival. Because what comes to mind is, how is this going to affect me? Well, we can't allow these people to continue getting away with this kind of stuff, glorifying something like this, which is understandably egregious in continuing. So we have to use our power to restrict their ability to do anything like that. And you have to find ways of doing it, though, legally. I don't even want to use the word legally. I mean morally, because legally you can do anything you want. We've seen that 100 times, ladies and gentlemen. Legally, you can come up with any law that advocates for the most egregious violations of human rights, whether it's trying to force experimental substances on people or trying to enslave people under the interest of trying to maintain the civility of a nation, something that took place only a couple hundred years ago. West Virginia, places all around the world trying to enforce slavery by saying that, well, it's a form of neighborliness. This is the kind of stuff you can do from a legal context. But morally speaking, if we're actually trying to be in line with, principles of freedom, common law, natural law, call it what you will, ladies and gentlemen, you can't be doing shit like that. You can't be using the power of the state to fire someone, and you can't, as a corporation, dishonor a contract just because you don't like the fact that someone said something that you don't agree with politically. But it seems that a lot of people have been leaning towards that. And I want to just talk about a few other arguments that I've been hearing in regards to the whole Charlie Kirk incident. I don't want to make this entire podcast about Charlie Kirk, but obviously this is a big area in the political discussion right now. I would say that the history of this decade, I'd say just over the last few years, just digressing a little here, we've had the whole lockdowns, the agenda being implemented, restriction of freedoms and so forth, which has massively affected society, even in ways that we are still seeing to this day. It's kind of like the 9/11 incident. We saw a massive change, a massive shift in our society because of that. But this assassination, in terms of the effect that it's had, I think it's going to have in the realm of politics, maybe gun control, understandably, and so many other areas, it's a big deal. And one of the things that people are doing, this equivocation, is they're making this comparison that the Charlie Kirk assassination is likened to the Malcolm X assassination, and I can see some similarities there. I don't think Charlie Kirk was anything like Malcolm X in that. I believe Malcolm X. Actually, did I say Malcolm X? Why am I doing Martin Luther King? No, I'm not. No, I meant Martin Luther King. Let me try that again. I believe that my brothers and sisters should come together as one. We should unite, and not in this world of hatred, judging people by the color of their skin, but we should be judging each other by the content of their character. Martin Luther King, the one thing I respected about him is his words were more about unity. He believed that black supremacy was just as bad as white supremacy. Granted, I don't agree with a lot of his political points and so forth. I actually do believe the spirit of his movement, his words were definitely not as divisive. I do believe there have been many incidents. And look, I don't want to make this a podcast about criticizing Charlie Kirk, because there's just something really ilky about doing that to someone that just passed away. But I will say that Martin Luther King's message, I think, was definitely something that was not accepted by many of the masses at the time. There are a lot of people that hated him. Understandably, that's why he was assassinated. But I don't believe that. You can always make comparisons. They were both Christian. They all both died at a relatively young age, and they both had the gumption to speak the truth about the world as they saw it. about things that were not considered appropriate to say at the time. And there's definitely a comparison there. But the way in which they did it, I feel on a more subjective level that the spirit that Martin Luther King brought was a very different. Charlie Kirk was more argumentative in his style, in terms of wanting to. It was more like a Malcolm X in that sense. Malcolm X was someone that was making intellectual arguments, where Martin Luther King was working in the spirit of inspiration, trying to appeal to people's hearts, appeal to people's compassion, as opposed to trying to do it on a more left-brain intellectual level. Also, people made the comparison to the George Floyd scenario. I was hearing Dave Smith speak about how he thinks it's a ridiculous comparison because, and I hate how people do this. They paint one victim to be less worthy. Charlie Kirk was such a good person. He was a family man. He didn't say this, but as Christian, I think that comes into the figure for a lot of people and so forth. These are completely irrelevant. Like, people paint George Floyd as being a bad person because he was counterfeiting, which is like a misdemeanor, ladies and gentlemen. And look, he was like the kind of things that this guy were like. Here's the question: does he make Dexter's List? Absolutely not. George Floyd did not deserve to be fucking murdered the way in which. And look, the argument you can make is that arguably, I believe that the people that were complicit in his death, what's actually happened is they were found guilty, correct? But you'd make the argument it was manslaughter. It wasn't done intentionally, and that's the biggest distinction here. Clearly, there was intent, and that means a lot. Someone actually tried to kill Charlie Kirk here, whereas you can make the argument that they weren't actually trying to kill George Floyd. You can make the argument they were, but the fact of the matter is 100%, as far as the effect, they did not deserve to be taken out like that. And it's an absolutely somewhat of a stupid argument to say that, well, because George Floyd was a bad person, it's a completely different. George Floyd was not a bad person, ladies and gentlemen. You can make the argument he was not a good person, and you can make the same argument about Charlie Kirk. The bottom line is that none of these people had committed atrocious crimes that required them to be assassinated like that. And making the argument that it was justified for one person to be assassinated like that is completely insane. Either way, neither of them make that list. I think the only comparison here is that they both fell to the hands of great violence, and it's something that I don't think anyone should have to suffer, whether it's through some systemic system of violence, which many people on the right advocate for, this inherent racism and so forth. But I would say ultimately it came down to an individual or individuals performing something that was atrociously immoral and led to the death of someone, and ultimately it was not justified. A few other things I wanted to bring up, moving away from the Charlie Kirk issue, and this has been a big one. Donald Trump obviously basically initiating war on a country and then saying that he's the biggest promoter of peace. I thought that was insane. Over the last few months, we saw Donald Trump get involved in a war that essentially popped off through to Israel, effectively dropping bombs on a country, which is an act of war. Let's be very clear about that. And then saying that it was an act of peace, freedom. And it was so beautiful, though, to see this thing diffused, to see Iran not aggravate the situation by essentially doing this, what's seemed almost ceremonial response by attacking a nearby American air base where they made sure they didn't take out any actual individuals, just to say on a more symbolic level that, look, you can't drop bombs on us without us having some retaliation. Going against the very narrative that they're so trigger happy wanting to start a war. It's so obvious that the Iranian government does not, the last thing they want, any sane country wants, is to go to a war with the biggest superpower. But that being said, they want to be able to protect themselves. And I don't want to go too deeply into the politics of the whole situation with Iran, but it's clear for anyone that's, and I guess this is the tricky thing, a lot of people that are new to this scene have not really lived through the history of the last 20, 30 years. This is showing my age here. But it's very clear to say that the United States has done egregious things to countries within the Middle East. I mean, there was the Gulf War crisis, which does not feel that long ago, but it's a lifetime ago if you're in your 20s or something like that, all right? And justifiably, the reaction of Iran, one of the reasons why they're so gung-ho and probably wanting to defend themselves from Israel is because countries like Israel, countries like the United States of America have been doing this kind of stuff where they've been dropping bombs on people, brown and black people, for such a long time that understandably you'd want some ability to defend yourself. But that being said, even though there are people, many of the people in that country are actively calling the United States the greatest Satan and saying how much they hate them and so forth, their actions, right, have been very different. I mean, you kind of apply the whole Charlie Kirk scenario to this, and whereas on one hand the U.S. is saying that Iran is such a big threat because their people are advocating for violence and so forth. They're speaking this kind of shit, saying we hate the U.S., blah 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 blah. They deserve to die, which is effectively not really an incitement for violence, but saying that you guys are fucking horrible, so forth, right? Which is in a sense what Charlie Kirk was doing. I mean, a lot of people argue that even though effectively he was just showing his distaste for a lot of the policies in place and so forth. But you can make the argument that the Iranians are essentially just speaking their minds, speaking about their hatred towards Israel and the United States. But on the other hand, the United States government, rather than actually just talking the talk and speaking about their hatred, they're actually manifesting physical violence. They're actually dropping bombs on these people. When I say these people, I'm talking about Iraq, talking about Afghanistan, and the worst argument ever from an international law standpoint, from a natural law standpoint, is that we're protecting our freedom by taking out these weapons of mass destruction, because the very fact that they have they may be developing these weapons as an act of war. And when you start making arguments like that, ladies and gentlemen, if you're being fair, rational about this kind of stuff, you become the aggressor. Don't give me this international political bullshit that it's acceptable because, well, you know, we have a right to defend ourselves. You can't claim a right to defend yourself because you think someone might do something bad in the future. This preemptive strike bullshit. It's kind of like saying, well, I shot that black guy because, you know, black people are dangerous. He looks like he has a big dick. You could use that as a weapon. Look at him. Look at me. Look at my big lips, my African features here. Clearly, I'm packing a big weapon under my under my pants here, and therefore I get to beat the shit out of that guy. It does not work like that, and this is effectively what I see going on when I see people like Donald Trump advocating for taking out Iran. I think what Israel is doing is demonstrable. They're not only picking on Israel. Israel is not only picking on Palestine, obviously, by committing genocide, but they've started, which is the insane thing, taking on a country that is capable of defending themselves. One of the most beautiful things, and I hate saying shit like this, but when you see justice in terms of, and I'm only going to say this within a general sense because on an individual level, it's atrocious anytime an innocent person suffers at the hands of violence. But if we look at this in terms of a state, in terms of a country, Israel compared to Iran, the fact that Israel is the one that started this beef by dropping bombs on Iran, it was so beautiful to see Iran retaliate and decimate Israel. I'm once again saying that it's horrible, the fact that there are innocent people that suffered on either hand, but it seems that Israel definitely underestimated the firepower of Iran, and we really got to see Israel as a state get some justice there. And it's horrible when you see so many Israelis that are actually protesting against what their government is doing, because it's so easy to find myself in the same situation where the Australian government, which is the country that I'm residing in, decides to drop bombs on a country, and it's unjustified. But thank goodness, more recently, the Australian government has actually shown its disfavor of Israel. They've not only claimed that Israel is committing genocide, the Australian government, but I think we're on the verge, if not already implemented this. We're looking at having restrictions, embargoes put on Israel to punish it for what it's doing, because it's absolutely insane. They are on the verge of literally invading Palestine now, and turning that country has been turning into an ash heap. And what we see happening to Charlie Kirk, I'm bringing it back to that again, is something that we have to look at in a broader picture. Happens every fucking day in Palestine. it's something that happens, and I'm gonna take this to a level that a lot of people, even more people, are gonna get frustrated over. That this happens every single minute, every single second to our fellow Earthlings that aren't unnecessarily slaughtered to feed our gluttonous appetite, right? And granted, you say that, well, they had a nice life and so forth. You've displaced their family members. And it's something that it's very, very difficult to do anytime we look at these topics. But I would make the sound argument that, anytime you are arguing against violence, you kind of have to look at what you're doing contributing to that violence yourself. And, definitely on some level, I think we're all complicit of that. You can make that argument. But on a more realistic level, you kind of have to be honest with yourself and say, hey, man, this is what this organization here is doing is just wrong, and I'm not going to stand for it. And that's what I try to do. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to try to wind this podcast down. We're only in 2025. We're halfway through this decade, and it's just happened like that. It feels like just yesterday that I was making videos every day about the insane lockdowns on the forefront of protesting against the insanity, because I actually believe in human rights. I believe in freedom. I believe in the sanctity of life. But most importantly, people's ability to make decisions for themselves. I have my own aspirations, my own attitudes toward my own morals, but on a universal level, I believe that we should at least have some universal ethic, moral principles, and that is to respect people's rights, not to infringe upon others. And that's what I stand for. In case you're trying to get an understanding, a reading of my worldview, I am not a leftist. I am not a right-winger. I believe in individual rights. I am a anarcho-capitalist, if you want to say that, put that into any kind of political philosophy. But ultimately, I do not believe in the initiation of violence. I am apolitical. And fundamentally, I'm just a humanist, an animalist. Animalist. Can I say that? Yeah, I like that because, animal comes from the concept of animus, which is the animating force working through us. We are all sentient beings inhabiting this vehicle, experiencing this Euclidean meat space reality, and we're all trying to navigate this world as best as we can. And we're trying to do this in a way where we do as little violence to our fellow Earthlings as possible. And you can call that whatever philosophy you will. We all have ways of understanding how we navigate this Euclidean meat space. But I believe in the golden rule, first and foremost. Do unto others as you would want done to yourself. Don't get caught up in this worldview that it's all right to do shit because this group is worse than you and so forth. This worldview of divide and conquer, where we see others as being the enemy, but realizing that ultimately we are all living under the same skies. We are all caught up in this space. We all have our goals and ambitions, but as someone suffers, we all kind of suffer. And it's not about selfishness per se. I mean, ultimately, the capacity to care about other people is coming from the fact that, yeah, it may not benefit you, but you feel the pain of someone else as if it were your own. And because you care about that person, which is the spirit of agape, you do not want any harm to come to them. And you have the ability to not to devise this love and only care about people that are part of your family, part of your nation, but to extend this, to cast a wider net to as much people, as much beings as we can, and actually try to be fair about this rather than being only concerned about my group of people, whether that is women, whether that is men, whether that is chocolate people, or the beautiful milk people, or the yellow people, the brown people, or the you know what I'm saying. I am on team freedom, ladies and gentlemen. I am on team we are all individuated consciousnesses experiencing this life, and we all need to come together as one. Ladies and gentlemen, freaks and geeks, brothers and sisters around the world, these are the machinations of yours truly, the chocolate Nubian soul brother, the vegan prince, the warrior king, the disseminator of supreme silliness. Hope you enjoy this, and be sure to drop us some comments. You can check out this video on YouTube. You'll see clips on the TikToks. It'll be on the Spotify, on Amazon, and various other outlets. Hit us up and let us know if you have any suggestions for guests. I'm trying to line up some interviews as we speak. These solo podcasts are fun, but it's always more fun getting someone else to share their thoughts. And also be sure to check out my masterpiece, my album, Apotheosis. It is available on USB music card, has 17 tracks. It's a USB device that allows you to put this on your Mac, your PC, but also on your phone through USB-C. And whereas, the CD might be dead, the tape is definitely long extinct, right? And vinyl is kind of cool, but I don't feel as if it's practical. A lot of people don't have vinyl players, but everyone pretty much has access to a PC these days, more or less, and that's what I'm doing. So if you want to support me, if you like my music or you like my musings from the guy in mind, you can support me by popping onto chrisjule.com or popping onto chrisjule.com and buying my USB card drive, $20. You can gain access to 17 tracks there, or you can check out the Spotify's, check out my music. But for now, as I always say, there are 3 things that cannot remain hidden for long: the sun, the moon, and the wisdomatic truth bombs of yours truly, Chris Jule, the esoteric, noetic, the chocolate Nubian soul brother, the singer, dancer, entertainer, the lover, the child. Oh! Peace.
I don't even care. There's lonely